that you have shown here in Kenya. You have taught us so much about how a country can take ownership and not be donor dependent. And even though we are listed here as the only donor, we know we are not the only donor. Each and every one of you is a donor because you are giving your time, you are giving your intellect, you are giving your passion to improving the lives of children and saving mothers. And so we hope to be here for the foreseeable future, for sure, partnering with you in this phenomenal process. Thank you very much.
That's the official launch of the Kenya Pediatric Fellowship Phase 2 at the Trademark Hotel, which is a joint venture of the in tabs with what is happening there.
Spirit that we task ourselves to, and the fact that we've done 500 specialists in record time, better than South Africa. I think this is something that you would consider even having other programs that we can partner with, and we'll be able to implement them in record time as agreed. Next is the representative of Ministry of Health, and this will be none other than Dr. Karimi, who is representing the Ministry of Health. Welcome, Dr. Chair, Council of Governors, Your Excellency Anne Waiguru, Chair, COG Health Committee, Your Excellency Muthomi Njuki, Vice President, East and Southern Africa, Mental Health Access Initiative, Gerald Masharia, the CEO of COG, Mary Mwiti, Senior MOH and county officials, representative of KPA, Dr. Supatunje, representatives from counties and academic institutions, our development partners and our key funder, Elma, Bernadette Moffat, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So my name is Dr. Janet Karimi, and I'm representing our CS for Health, Honorable Susan Nakumicha, who unfortunately could not make it today. So I'll read the speech on her behalf. I am delighted and honored to be part of this ceremony that aims to improve access to quality healthcare services for our children. Our children are our future. Every parent looks at their child with a hope for their success and prosperity. In the same way, for our country, our future success and prosperity is pegged on our children. Therefore, we must invest in their survival and create an environment for them to thrive and be able to transform themselves, their families, their communities, this country, and the world. The recently released 2022 Kenya Demographic Health Survey showed that there was a drop in the under 5 mortality rate from a peak of 115 deaths in 2003 to 41 per 1,000 live births in 2022. However, the reduction in newborn mortality rate has been slower, from a peak of 33 deaths per 1,000 live births in 2003 to currently 21 deaths per 1,000 live births in 2022. So newborn deaths actually account for 51% of the deaths among the children under 5. So ladies and gentlemen, with this in mind, the government of Kenya has committed to the attainment of universal health coverage by ensuring that all people have access to the full range of quality health services that they need, where and when they need them, without financial hardship. And as part of this government agenda to achieve UHC, investment in newborn survival and health is key, as reduction in newborn deaths will result in increased life expectancy of Kenyans. Investment in newborn health is key, as health and nutrition in the first 1,000 days determines the neurocognitive, physical, social development in a child, which influences their academic success and ultimately their future productivity, and therefore this impacts on the country's future GDP. So investment in newborns to ensure they survive and thrive is a key pillar in human capital development, and therefore is a priority for the government of Kenya. Additionally, investment in a child's health is also an investment in their health all through their life course. children who are malnourished have been shown to have higher risk factor of developing chronic illnesses in future, for example, diabetes and hypertension. So investing in children ultimately reduces the cost of healthcare for an individual across their life course and therefore reduces the national healthcare expenditure in general. So in its commitment to invest in children, the Ministry of Health recognized that there was a limited pool of trained healthcare workers able to provide specialized pediatric care to newborns and the pediatric population. And most of these specialists, as has been said here before, were predominantly found in the urban centers. So the Kenya Pediatric Fellowship Program was developed in 2019 to address this gap by providing scholarships to enable trained specialist pediatric nurses and pediatric subspecialists to give routine and intensive care to children. So the Kenya Pediatric Fellowship Program is a partnership, as has been said here, between the Ministry of Health, the Council of Governors, the county governments, the Elmer Foundation, who is the main funder, the Clinton Health Access Initiative, and the Kenya Pediatric Association, and select training institutions including Moi University, Nairobi University, the Gertrude's Institute of Children Health and Research, and the Kenyatta National Hospital. So we are happy to see the 148 healthcare workers who have been trained. As was shown before in the slides, we have 60 pediatric critical care nurses, 34 pediatric nurses, and 30 midwives. So the program has also benefited 24 pediatricians, among whom are 9 neonatologists who will give specialized care to the sick and small newborns so that we can reduce this gap in the newborn mortalities. The program has benefited healthcare workers across all 47 counties who have now gone back to serve in the county facilities. This program has therefore contributed already to the reduction that we have seen in the under 5 mortalities across the country. So it is my hope that as these beneficiaries go back to working in the county hospitals, that they shall be advocates for our children's health and well-being, that they shall mentor health workers in their facilities and even in the lower level facilities as part of strengthening the primary care networks. We envision that the health workers trained under this fellowship program will not only look at treating children at the facilities, but go to work with the linked primary healthcare facilities and even the communities, to work with the community health promoters so that they can provide education to mothers on safe pregnancy, prevention of childhood illnesses, and promote early care seeking for their children when they are unwell. In this way, these pediatricians and pediatric nurses will not only serve the hospitals, but also serve the...
That has been Dr. Karimi from the Ministry of Health, there representing the CS for Health, Susan Nakumisha, who actually is supposed to be gracing that occasion, which is the launch of the Kenya Pediatric Fellowship Program Phase 2 at the Trademark Hotel there. Just to mention a few things that they have been able to point out is that the initiative is to ensure that we have a reduction in mortality. Deaths have been progressive but slow. Also, the government is speeding up investment in newborn health to ensure survival of infants, increasing midwives and specialized centers to reduce infant mortality, just to mention but a few. And health, talking about health, is that it's one of the key pillars of any government, and the government has done a lot to ensure that we have reduced cases of infant mortality. Just back in the last regime, we had the Beyond Zero, and we have been able to have mobile maternity centers in areas where health is a big challenge. Well, that I believe should be our starting point. We are looking at the scorecard. Remember, tomorrow we'll be celebrating, and also the president will be celebrating 1 year in office, 13th of September. But just a recap of what happened on that day, on 13th of September, the head of state did mention a number of things that had to be changed. One, the subsidies were scrapped off by the president, and he also talked about ensuring that the farmer is enabled, meaning that fertilizer was announced that the price would be reducing from about 6,500 at that time to a low of 3,500, which has been lowered further to about 2,500. And also on the same day, the head of state did announce that actually it was an executive order he signed that announced the 6 judges who the previous regime had refused to swear in were actually also as well the lucky guys on the first day of the president. Another thing is that the president also talked about cushioning Kenyans in regards to the high cost of living. This is just a tip of the iceberg of what we will be discussing with my panel this morning. Now, allow me to introduce my panelists, beginning from my immediate left. We have Edward Githaiga. Edward Githaiga is the CEO of Vision 2030 Youth Entrepreneurs Association. Of course, the youth also have a big say in regards to the new government. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much for hosting me today.
Yeah.
And indeed, it's a great moment for this country, especially now talking post ACS African Climate Summit, which was a very great success, and which just shows the direction the government of Kenya is moving towards. Ni kusema na kufanya na kuendelea.
All right.
So we are here to give our own views and a perspective of what we think the government has been able to achieve, and we strongly trust and believe in the government of Kenya and what the president is doing for Kenya and
yes,
the young people.
And it's a good thing that you're here, because you will tell us that the government did actually, before he was actually announced the head of state, he had also talked about the youth. So you're going to tell us whether the youth feel they have been quite well represented in the one-year government. And just next to him, we have Dr. Harun Isaac Hassan. Dr. Harun Isaac Hassan is a political analyst and also a governance expert. Good to see you, Doc.
Thanks, Njue.
And of course, you also tell us a lot about the health sector, because we have a lot of things. Begin. And we also be joined by constitutional lawyer Gibson Gisore. But before then, Doc, I will begin with you. We had Beyond Zero, and after President William Ruto also took government, he has also stepped up matters maternal health, and also looking into increasing facilities in our hospitals, which most of them are not quite there yet. Even our level 5 facilities, our level 4 and level 3 facilities are not there yet. You are the person on the ground. Tell us something about how the health sector has transformed in the last 1 year.
Thank you, Njue. Thank you, my fellow panelists. He's my friend, actually. We have been friends for so long.
For a very long time.
We know very well that Kenya Kwanza is about to complete, or a day to 1 year in the office. And the important thing that one will want to know is to have a benchmark on what has been in their manifesto and what is it that they have done for this short time. 1 year is a very short time in terms of delivering major projects. But in terms of planning, in terms of setting the pace for things that needs to be worked on, I think it is something that we need to look at. There are issues related to the quick, we call it the quick win, the intermediate win, and of course a long-term win. And every framework or every plan is anchored on those steps. As we review now 1 year, period that they are in the office, a number of things that the government has promised that probably they have fulfilled, or one way or another they have started the process of fulfilling it. One, as you mentioned, is the health sector.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the health sector falls under the long-term, or rather the medium-term achievement. It's not something that you can do a quick fix or quick win. But some of the things that we see that has been put in place gives an indication that perhaps there will be progress towards the success in terms of the plan. What are some of the things that the Kenya Kwanza government has put in place for that particular period? One is, first and foremost, they established the framework in which both Kenya Medical, KEMSA, Kenya Medical Supplies Agency, is supposed to be operating and is supposed to be formulating. You remember very well there was an issue in regards to corruption issues in regards to KEMSA, where immediately the president has taken an action in terms of zero tolerance, in terms of indicating or showing Kenyans that he has zero tolerance in his government for any corruption cases. And that is when he has dismissed the PS who was in charge of, plus all the management of KEMSA. That was a very good move in terms of planning, in terms of preparation, and in terms of ensuring that the games that people used to play is not the same as the one that Kenya Kwanza will entertain for people to play when you are an employee. That is in the sector of drug supplies, which is the key thing at the national level. The other thing is, of course, the reorientation process of national health insurance funds, an indication that perhaps former arrangement, which has stayed there for so long, didn't work very well, and still Kenyans did not have full benefit of the NHIF that has been in place. Looks like now the government thought it is time to review and understand and see what will going to benefit Kenyans in terms of health insurance, in terms of health services, health financing, and in terms of the role that NHIF plays. And then now they have introduced the universal health care system. The universal health care system is removed very well. It has been tried twice, almost.
All right, and we will be talking about that because there are some amendments that the government also is mulling over in terms of how the health sector is, and more specifically on the NHIF. Of course, some people have said this is the way to go. Others are still protesting because it will now be based on how much you make as opposed to a straight figure. But Githaiga,
yes,
the head of state still on the same. The Ministry of Health.
Yes.
I remember even in the previous regime, the CS for Health said that even in this house, that is Afia House, there are some mafias here, and also Susan Nakumisha has talked about there are some challenges here, and she said that she's the new broom which is supposed to sweep far much better than the other broom. And the health is a very pertinent issue. We've seen the head of state even talk about, looking for some cash for the community health workers. And Doc has said, this is not something that we expect to see the fruits right now. I would like to pick your mind on how the health sector has transformed in the last 1 year.
Thank you very much. My name is Edward Githaiga, the CEO of Vision 2030 Youth Entrepreneurs Association. And it's always a great pleasure to join here at KBC, the #1 TV station.
Thank you, bro.
And supporting our own resources. But just to begin and just to acknowledge what Aktari has said, indeed he's my good friend. We've known each other for a very long time. And it's always a pleasure to be around him and to listen to his wisdom and the information that he has to share. So Vision 2030, if I can just briefly explain a bit, we are a youth enabling aggregator where we inspire young people into success. So basically we work across the region, we work across the continent and the globe. We have several programs that we work with. The main program that we deal with is called the Bilateral Trade Diplomacy Program, where we are working together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other institutions who we are in touch with, to ensure that every time our nation goes out there and signs a bilateral agreement, we are able to harness and pick into that opportunity. However, we'll get to know much more about our organization as we move. But going back to the topic that you mentioned, in the areas of health, I think the president has done quite well. I would give the government, Ministry of Health and the president himself an 8 out of 10. Because he has been able to bring sobriety within the institutions, right? There's a lot of reforms that are currently ongoing. These are quiet reforms, but they're systemic reforms. Reforms that will ensure that areas like the NHIF are things that in the past there was a lot of mismanagement of these funds. We're talking about issues to do with KEMSA, the Kenya Medical Supplies. There was a lot of theft and outright, corruption
All right.
that was happening in these places.
Kindly, Bonagidaiga,
Yes.
just a minute. Let's first of all cross over to the Serena, where
Sure.
the Immigration and Citizen Service PS Professor Julius Bitok is currently speaking in regards to. Let's first of all listen in.
Within the 90 days directed by His Excellency, this team are going to roll out activities towards implementation of national digital identity. So we have a very cordial meeting. We have had presentations on the national digital identity has 4 components. One component is a unique personal identifier called Maisha number. The second component is called Maisha card, a 3rd generation ID, which is a new version of the current ID which we have. The fourth component is the digital ID, the option of having the ID on a mobile phone instead of having a physical card. The last component, the 4th component, is what we call National Master Population Register, a register which comprises of all persons living in Kenya. That is all persons born in Kenya from civil registration, all people turning 18 years from National Registration Bureau, all persons who have migrated to Kenya from the immigration database, and all refugees living in Kenya. So it is a master population register which is able to speak to each other, which is integrated well to the extent that whenever someone applies for a passport, the system should be able to confirm that that person has a birth certificate, that person has an ID, so that the system is seamless and we're able to have accuracy in our identity management system.
Are we good? We have questions? Yes, please. Say your name and your station.
I'm Eric Korenda from Citizen Radio. I just wanted to know now what will happen.
That is PS Julius Bitok there, leading the Principal Secretary Subcommittee on the National Digital Identity Technical Committee. We are having a brief session there with the members of the press in regards to the project. And he has said that they are firmly on track to issue digital IDs, which will be integrated well with your information, which will bring together all information, including the birth certificate, more or less like the one we had, the Huduma number. But now this is the first phase of having that dream actually be actualized in the country. So the processes are in place and they will be announcing the next course of action in regards to that. Remember, they were tasked by the president in regards to unveiling of a digital identity card here in the country. We'll be getting much more on the same in our subsequent bulletin. But if you just joined us, this is KBC News Check. We are looking at the state of the nation, just a day to celebrating 1 year since President William Ruto took the reins of power as the 5th Commander-in-Chief of the Republic of Kenya. I'm joined by Edward Githaiga, who is the CEO of Vision 2030 Youth Entrepreneurs Association. Just next to him, we have Dr. Harun Isaac Hassan, who's a political analyst and governance expert. And now we are also joined by a constitutional lawyer, Gibson Gisore. Gentlemen, again, karibuni.
Thank you.
Before we crossed over for
Yes.
that briefing,
Yes.
we were talking about the health, the
Yes.
few milestones. Doc
Yes.
did indeed mention that we cannot really eat the fruits of the health sector now.
Yes.
It's something in the pipe works.
Yes.
Now, in the last 1 year, what are some of the gains that we have been able to pick up? Indeed, the cleaning up of KEMSA, I'm quite sure many Kenyans, that can resonate a lot with a lot of Kenyans. There's something you were talking about.
The
in
main
regards
thing
to
is
the
like the digitization, what the government, the digital program that the government has that is touching into every sector or every department, like in the health sector. There's a lot of areas of digitization that is currently going on. And this will enable both access to service, for example, access to these hospitals, and even record keeping, the mobility of health records. Because when it comes to digitization of health services, that means you go to an hospital, maybe in Othaya, which is Kenyatta National Hospital, and once you're seen there, you get your details taken in a card. But with the digitization that the government is planning, it will mean that your data will be mobile. So if you're referred to now Nairobi Kenyatta Hospital, your data moves with you because it's on a digital system or a digital platform. And like you were saying, again, the issues of the reforms even in NHIF, the government now looking at how they can improve on that so that the beneficiaries, who are the Kenyan citizens, the people who voted for this government, even those who did not vote for the government, to benefit from these health services. Yeah.
And also we'll be looking at more aspects of the health sector, but allow me to rope in our constitutional lawyer, Gibson Gisore. We have just had the press, and I'm quite sure you've listened to what the representative of Health CS, Susan Nakumisha, has talked about. And the health sector, just looking at it, indeed, it's quite early to take stock of each and everything that has happened in the health sector. But there are some things that we have seen and noticed in the last 1 year that the government has done. The good example is cleaning up the mess at KEMSA. I would like to pick your mind on that.
Thank you, Troy, for inviting me to the show. And it's always a pleasure to be with Daktari. And I didn't know that there's a Kenya Youth Vision 2030 business people.
Yes.
I met the CEO.
Yeah.
That's quite commendable. I thought he was the CEO for Vision 2030 so that I could start work with him immediately. But I mean, he's an enabler of the Vision 2030, which is a good thing.
Yes.
So from where I sit, I mean, it has been quite a roller coaster of activities for the last 1 year. And to speak truth is that, I mean, there is a semblance in which the president has been able to handle issues. If it were to be somebody who was a coward or a newbie in politics or a president who didn't know what exactly is needed for Kenya, he could have cowered and disappeared or taken a different tangent. But the president has stuck to his guns, has stuck to the agendas of UDA, which he put across to Kenyans. Is on the ground working on those, and one of those is the health agenda. And what I think I could want to commend him basically on the health issue is the issue of getting the community workers to actually do screening in every home. You know, that touches each and every Kenyan in every corner of this particular republic. People do die of very funny things which people should not be dying of. For example, blood pressure. You never know that you have blood pressure. It's a silent killer. But if the health workers will be passing around, doing rounds every week or in every month, they will tell you you need to have it checked. So it will save somebody's lives. We have people with asthma. They can be able to be, the way my friend is talking about that, they need to be digitized. I hope they will give them smartphones so that their records are put in the process, so that they can be even cyclical reminders to have your health checked. If it's asthma, you are being warned, you'll be warned an alarm that, you know, it's the cold season, make sure you are warm, and then most probably if you don't have your medication, go for it. You see, having that in itself is going to transform the way healthcare is handled in this particular republic, because most people actually die at home, not at the hospitals. And some of the ailments which we are actually not supposed to, people are not supposed to die of in this particular age and era. So we will be making very bold steps, but then on the other side, on the issues of health, we also need to look at the counties. I think the bad side of the health is that it was devolved to the counties. We will wish that something be done so that there's proper oversight from the national government, because when we have doctors complaining that they have not been paid for 2-3 months, others have been, like in Nakuru, I heard the chairman say people have stuck in the same rank, senior doctors who are supposed to be consultants or registrars actually being paid like an intern. You know, that does not give the morale. It kills the morale of these people, and even their service delivery is also put into question, or they will not be giving their A game. So much as we are making efforts, we also need to loop in and see what the counties are doing and what exactly are they doing to enhance, to complement government in terms of the delivery of health services. We have a lot to actually discuss in terms of the affairs of what the president has been able to achieve. Just to start with, the last act is the Climate Change Act, which he pulled all of Africa to make a clear statement that in Africa we are also partake us in this. We understand the challenges of climate change, and we want to be involved in the terms of decision making. The only last time Africa was tried to look like they were pulling together was when Meles Zenawi was the Prime Minister of Ethiopia. That's way back, when the negotiations for the Paris 2015 arrangement was actually being discussed. I think it must have been in Copenhagen. But then we also did not speak as one front because of some of the challenges. There are some other issues we can talk about, whether it was a success, the Nairobi Declaration was a success or not, but it's a good for the start. And it gives a lot of credibility as to Kenya is leading the way. Actually, if you ask anybody outside Africa, especially in Europe, and there's a joke which has been going around social media that you ask people in the West, in America, which is the capital of Africa, because those people believe that Africa like is a country. So they always say it's Nairobi. They never talk of Cairo, they never talk of Johannesburg. They just say it's Nairobi, because that means there's something we are doing right. And the president, by making that particular statement, and then compounding by one other thing which also has played a key role in terms of recognition of Africa being on the table of decision making, by us being admitted into the G20, it's something which is really very commendable. I think by us moving that we are going to start speaking as one, then the world is now respecting us. Now immediately, we have already been admitted to the G20. We hope we'll
also be looking at the foreign
we'll be given veto powers.
We'll be looking at the foreign policy that the head of state has been able to adopt. He has been to about 21 countries in the last 1 year alone. And bringing up the climate summit in the country, it just was a statement to the whole world, because listening at his speeches is that enough is enough. Africa, we are not getting the short end of the stick again, but we'll be looking at the foreign policy, and especially on the issue of passports and visas, which seems to be opening up the region as well. Anyway, Doc, let's have a final word in terms of the health, because the issue of the community health workers being incorporated into the health system and actually being empowered, just like Gisore has talked about, even giving them good funds to have maybe the statistics and keeping the data and the record. You come from the ASO counties, of which, when it comes to matters health, you cannot compare Mandera and Nairobi because of a number of factors. I would like to pick your mind on that, the impact that this is going to have, especially for the arid and semi-arid counties.
Joy, thank you, Wakili. Wakili has pointed out quite a number of things. I'm sure we're going to touch on issues that he has also pointed out. But I think, as you have put it, primary health care, there were three things that the Azimio or Kenya Kwanza government has promised. They committed themselves to. One is, of course, providing finance for primary health care. And primary health care means prevention, promotion, and curative. And part of the prevention is where now they have instituted the community health workers at the grassroots level. That means as much as a lot needs to be done in terms of building the capacity of the community health workers on their role as community health workers at the grassroots level, and the link between them and the facilities that provide services in the event that they identify medical conditions, or in the event that they identify outbreaks of communicable diseases, then it is a very good move and we must acknowledge that involving community workers at the grassroots level gives an upper hand in terms of preventive medical services. That means then, said, we are trying to lower the curative cost. Therefore, the cost of people with chronic illnesses, the cost of people coming to facilities for medication will reduce, because primarily, if you are shown how to prevent yourself from illnesses, then you are unlikely to get into hospital. And of course, going to a hospital means you're going to be paying money. And buying drugs and seeing consultants or seeing health personnel for consultation services. So that is a very great move. a challenge comes in terms of how effective this will be in areas which are hardly accessible even today as we speak after 50 years of independence, particularly the Asal region. You will be shocked if I tell you the whole of Mandera County has no tarmac. That means then if a mother gets a labor in around 120 kilometers away from Mandera town, which is the only referral hospital, the possibility of either that mother losing the baby or even losing both the baby and the mother is very high. The possibility of delivering in the ambulance or the vehicle that they're using to transport her from that remote area to the facility is very high. And of course, it comes with a lot of other things in terms of infection prevention control, in terms of, the event that you will find some complications, nobody will attend to that particular person very quickly. So those challenges are still in place. And the fact that now we want to take information regarding health status of communities at the grassroots level to the apex of health services at the shortest time possible, then a lot needs to be done. One, we must look at the ways in which we put infrastructure in place. Secondly, you may be shocked that there are not even telecommunication network in part of the areas. And if it is even there, it cannot afford, it cannot sustain, a bundle so that someone can access the internet and do some few things. Recently, the digitalization CS initiated, a free Wi-Fi in Mombasa. I think that is not where to start. In big cities, we already have these things, and people are able, one way or another, to provide for themselves services in terms of network and connectivity. The best thing is to start with areas which have no access completely. That way we are able to make meaning in terms of what outcome we expect from the services that those digitalization will provide. It is true that the best thing is to have, like globally in other countries, in countries which are highly developed, you cannot attend every other time different facilities with different details of yours being asked every other time. Once digitalization is done and we know we have a system that covers across all the health information regarding a specific person who has visited facilities, then you are able to track record of the person's illness for the period that he has been sick. Doctors often ask you, how was your medical history before, But when sometimes people forget, once the illness is not very severe, or if you have been treated for that illness and you are cured, after sometimes you will forget what you have been even treated for. Quite often, the way medics write, you cannot keep the record of that. But when we systemize the whole process and put information regarding specific patients in a digitalized manner, and a doctor in Mandera, a doctor in Turkana, and a doctor in Nairobi, as soon as you present your name and your particulars, he is able to find your details in regards to your medical history. That will going to take us to another level in terms of our case management and in terms of coming up with a proper medical decision in terms of when situation changes. For example, you have been treated for an illness that was it was likely to end up in a chronic disease. But because of haphazardness in terms of the way we treat, you are treated here in a clinic, you get some medication, you leave. After a year or two, you start having similar things, or you may have a different thing, but it's the same thing that is growing. Therefore, I think digitalization is another thing. But the other thing we expect, why I said that this will take a long time, is of course the issue of providing resources for chronic and catastrophic diseases. For example, cancers, diabetes, hypertension, injuries as a result of trauma, people who are getting paralyzed. And these are people who require either palliative treatment, or these are people who require long-term treatment, or until otherwise they leave. they need support from, they will be regular visitors to health facilities. And if finances or coverage are provided for this particular group of people within the country so that they get proper health facility, health services then means the government will be moving in the right direction. So the three things that they have already decided on or promised or committed in their manifesto looks like now they are still at the initial stage, but I can see there are progresses that are being made in terms of initiating the commitments they promised Kenyans. And I think Kenya Kwanza government is heading to the right direction at the moment, if I see the way things are going.
All right.
Having said that, the health sector is crushed by corruption. And that is why each and every cabinet secretary goes into Afya House, terms the place as Mafia House. But I think what happens is that cartels always fight back. They will fight from different directions. But if the president has given them the mandate to deal with their problems, the people in the ministry, the CS and his PS and his team, and they don't join the cartels, or they don't give in to the cartels, I think this is something that can be cleared very easily.
All right.
But Kenyans always being greedy, looking for money.
Okay.
We are not certain whether they will
and we are hoping that the government actually will wipe out. The good thing that Susan talked about, a new broom which we expect to be sweeping, but it's a good thing that you've quite elaborated that, because that is squarely one of your strong points when it comes to the medical field. But Gidaiga, let's look at the three things, the three arms of government, beginning with the executive. We saw what he did for the judiciary, but we will be getting that. We have the Wakili here when he signed judges and also increased the budget to with about 5 billion shillings. But let's look at his executive, because the first thing he did after he took over office, he looked at the Kenyans who can help him, and he did the CSs and the PSs and announced that that is the team that will deliver the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. But less than a year, one of the PSs has already been fired, and also the board of KEMSA was also cleaned up. I would like us to have a look at his right men and women in the cabinet, how they've been able to perform so far.
I think the president has been categorical on this matter. It's not about you being his friend, it's a matter of giving services to the mwananchi. And like you mentioned, so if I can just quickly jump back into the point that just to conclude, the community health workers, I believe the Kenya Kwanza government is moving in the right direction, because once you recognize the CHW or the CHV, as they are called, community health volunteers on the ground, and you equip them with the right technology, the gadgets, the IoTs devices, the different Internet of Things devices, like even a basic temperature thermometer, something that can, test blood pressure, something that can test even as simple as maybe even STDs, STIs, especially for young people. Because what we have right now is an issue of where young people are kind of abstaining from looking after their health. So they start developing issues that if they went to hospital or they had access to that information or access to a service provider to the basic level in the grassroots, which would be a CHW or community health worker. So they can also, these CHWs are very important, because in terms of alarm systems, like you were saying, we had COVID-19 come in, and it started with a cough. But this cough was not like any other cough. You're getting like malaria, you start feeling fever. So if CHVs are equipped well enough to detect certain symptoms within the ecosystem or within the community level, and there is a platform or a digital platform where they can key in this data, and that data is taken to another level where you have experts who can now read into that data and advise the president on this, because we spend so much money trying to fix the problem when it's already happening. But preventative is the best way. So you have areas like non-communicable diseases. There's a lot of people suffering from lifestyle diseases, cancer and all that. And you know how expensive it is. But the community health worker or volunteer can play a significant role in that process of the treatment. So therefore, I believe that the current government is looking at it in the proper way. And the other thing, even with the Nairobi County government, which is also, and we encourage every county in Kenya to see what they can do so that they can pull in resources, because government can't do it all alone. But they need partnership with the county governments, and especially that the county governments are the ones who run the devolved unit of health. So they have to also pump in money to recruit more health workers so that we can have a rapid health intention project where we want to eradicate this disease. I'll tell you one of the reasons why we have to do this. If you look at how much money our Kenyan people are spending on health, for treatment, flying abroad, raising harambees, how are we going to build our economy when the little savings the Kenyans have end up using that money in hospital? And when the person is in hospital, it's an emergency. They may survive, they may not survive. So families are spending all these millions and selling their lands and getting into debt. So the only best way is now with this young generation of Kenyans to now be more conscious about their health. And that's why we have to support this government to implement the policies that they are currently putting in place so that access to health, universal health, quality services can be reached. Then as we move now to the areas of governance, good governance is not a matter of, everybody takes an oath. And it's kind of unfair to relate those PSs to be cronies or friends. No. When it comes to nation and national leadership, it goes beyond friendship. It's now you've taken an oath, it's constitutional governance, it's the rule of law, and there's nothing like the president is going to protect you. The president has been very firm, and you can see with the Kemsa matter, that changing and people going was a point of showing that he's not going to tolerate, as it has been before, even with Kibaki, even with the former president Uhuru Kenyatta. They used to tolerate corruption. Instead of doing the changes there and then and dealing with the matter there and then, they kind of say, what do I do? But with a proactive president like he is, and also bringing the other aspect of his Pan-Africanism. You see, I believe the president, if we can talk about his Pan-Africanism, he's fighting not just for Kenya, he's fighting for Africa, because for a very long time, Africa has been viewed from a negative perspective or a negative microscope. We've been viewed as a continent where people die of diseases, hunger, strife and wars.
We've been declared high-risk continent.
Exactly.
And especially it came out during the climate change.
And you know that is biased, because I can show you a point why the president is very tough on the West and their untruthfulness in how they do things. When we had COVID-19 and the whole world was like, we need to get vaccinated. Do you know third world countries, least developing countries, were not able to access?
Yeah.
And yet the first worlds, the Western countries had stockpiles from here to Mexico. Yet they were denying us to access that. And that's the injustice that we're talking about. So even when he's fighting that level, he has to ensure the local base sticks to that agenda. So therefore, the president and the deputy president, you can see there is a form of order in his government. Cheza uone mambo matatu.
Yeah.
You heard about mambo matatu.
Yeah, and I would like Wakili also to come in here. I remember he also talked about, just a minute, he also talked about that some of his some of his CSs are not quite privy with what is happening in their ministries, which also to me it's a red flag that the president raised and said that you guys, you cannot be a CS and you do not know about the ministries. We're also going to look at the executive orders, but gentlemen, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Indeed, you're watching KBC News Tech. We'll be right back. We are looking at the 1 year of the Kenya Kwanza administration, being the 5th regime of the country. led by President William Ruto. We'll be back in a few.
What was she doing at the sawmill? Did she go there to see Danielle?
고혜린 핸드폰 위치 파악해.
장인동이에요. 장인 중앙교회 근처 기지구에서 신호가 잡힙니다.
수신된 고혜린 사진.
아, 거참 거 더럽게 시끄러.
이게 또 뭐 하는 짓이에요? 대체 나한테 왜 이래요, 정말?
내가 평생 안 하던 선심 한번 썼다가 나 지금 골로 가게 생겼거든? 나 고혜린 씨한테 이 정도는 해도 되잖아. 기브 앤 테이크.
대체 지금
도망다니기 지치지도 않나?
아직 할 일이 남아서 기다려요. 때가 되면 스스로 찾아갈 테니까.
배신자, 첩자 주제에 말이 많네.
Kujua una mipango gani kuhusiana na story ya Abel?
It's my story. Wewe inakutatiza kwa nini? Nani amekuambia kuwa umwaza mtu mwingine?
Sasa hivi niwe na mwaza nani?
Is Casey the reason why mom left?
What?
Well, inaonekana hapa mimi ndio mama tu peke yake.
Are you the reason why mom and dad are fighting? Are you destroying our family?
Welcome back to KBC News Check. Just in case you joined us, we are taking stock of the 1 year that the Kenya Kwanza administration led by President William Ruto. Remember, we are celebrating, the first anniversary should be tomorrow, the 13th. You do remember after taking the reins of power, he did set up a cabinet that assist him to actualize the Kenya Kwanza agenda. But during the performance contracting, he said that all the CSAs are put on notice to work, because he noted that some of the CSAs are not quite private to the information of the ministry. He said that some of the CSAs, I'm quite sure I know the ministry better than they do, and he said that's a big issue. So we are looking at how the cabinet has been performing in the last couple of months with my three panel of experts. We have Edward Githaiga, we have Harun Isaac Hassan, and we also have Gibson Gisore. Wakili, before we left, the first thing he did, actually after he was sworn in at the Kasarani, he said that he's going to sign the first executive order that the 6 judges who the previous regime had refused to have them sworn in, that was done the same day. And after that, we have seen a number of executive orders that he has, and you can shed light on some of the things that he has been able to accomplish, and especially when it comes to his cabinet. Those are his right-hand men and women who will help him actualize the Kenya Kwanza agenda.
Thank you, Troy. You see, one thing you've got to give our president is that he's a doer, and he is a proactive person. I guess I don't know. I don't have any other better he could have done it other than do it the same way he did in front of everybody, because that had been an egg in the face of the regime, the past regime, because there were orders after orders after orders. Put this case to office. If you have anything, bring it. It never was brought, and I mean, it became very murky. I mean, there was that aspect of the former regime, especially the former president, not being a person who respected the courts. I think after the 2017 election petition, and that showed this other side whereby we expected better of him. As a head of state, you don't take things personally. You need to admit some you lose, some you gain, and then you are the father of the nation, symbol of national unity. I don't think he did that by disrespecting the court orders. So by the president coming in, he was basically saying, I'm going to do things differently. And he started it from the podium. And that we have to give it to him that, it was a very strong statement across the country and across to Africa or whoever was watching, that it's a man who means business. Whatever he feels and deems that needs to be done, he does it there and then. So that is something which Kenyans are going to reap out of, because the goodwill from the presidency is something which goes a long way in terms of actualization of his agenda, and actually in terms of demonstrating the goodwill that you cannot do some things and get away with them. So that is one. The second thing is the aspect of what you've asked about his cabinet. Cabinet slots are mostly political to balance the ethnic centers and ensure that each side is covered. But then there comes a problem if you realize that you are picked from a certain region or you are picked for a particular docket, actually does not have the passion. Like in the other time, somebody was talking about the passionometer. Their passionometer is so down that they cannot be able to even ignite any fire so that things can happen. So, or they are clueless, or they are totally detached from the very ministry which they are handling. Being a president, being a very proactive person, endeavors to know what is needed, where and when. So if some of the ministers or some of his cabinet appointees seem to be a bit slow in terms of doing things, then they're gonna have a problem. And a run up to the 1 year, I think it's high time. If he strongly believes that there are some ministers. We have our own views out here, but it's his cabinet. But if we were advising him, I think there are some few people I think who could have been shown the door already. But then it's his speaker. I don't know. He needs to maybe give a very strong statement the way he did to ensure that service delivery is top notch, because he is a perfectionist, a person who does the job. How would your own people whom you have appointed fail you while you are known for something else? So that is something I think even giving the warning, it was a warning shot to them, so that they can actually know that things are not going to be business as usual. I mean, how do you even show up late for a president's meeting? What are you busy doing? I understand that same day, some other person had come from Kisumu and gotten to the meeting earlier than people who were just in Nairobi. So that shows that even these people, they do not give the president the respect he deserves. So why will you be working with such people? Just show them the door, get people who can actually be able to work. And that is the second thing which Kenyans are going to gain a lot from, given that he also is a person who ensures that he puts people in their right place and ensures that whatever it is that they've been tasked to do, they do it. Coming to the other issues of what it is that has been able to be achieved over time, we've seen the president try to enforce his 5 key agendas, that is housing, which he has really moved heaven and earth to ensure that really it takes off. It hasn't fully taken off, but I think people... The first money went into the treasury a month or 2 months back. So we need to expect the houses starting to come up. And in the next 1 year, we should be able to have houses. If we do not have them, then we will start asking questions. So that is one thing. We have seen agriculture where he has been in the forefront to ensure that give the farmers the inputs they need so that they can be able to to actually do the farming without stress, so that there is enough for people to eat, so that we can alleviate the hunger and the cost of production, the cost of living comes down. That is another thing. But on the other hand side, I think that needs to be complemented, because if you're going to have a bumper harvest, you need to also have better means of storage. So I don't know how much money has been given to NSPB to ensure that they take all the excess maize, so that they have them in store, so that running forward next year at around April, May, we do not start saying, hey, it's hunger again, and then we are given the same story that, we have given fertilizer, wait for a year so that we harvest, and then the hunger will go down. So those are some of the issues which needs to be complementary. We've seen something which I've really been talking about is the issue of industrialization. We have seen the trade minister and the president go around the country, launch the aggregation centers. I don't know what the policy is, but it is a very good move, but I would want to take more information as to how they plan it to work. Because we especially need proper processes to actually do agro-processing, which we can be able to export to Europe. Once we export to Europe, then we can be able to get the foreign exchange, and even the dollar will go down. Our economy will be strong because we will have had influx of money. Trade is way better than aid. If we can be able to treat things from trade ways, because a part of Mombasa, yesterday I spent my better part on Mombasa Road. I saw a lot of cargo trains coming. That means that there's business happening. But when going down, they are empty. We need to change the trend. We need to have them come in and then they go down the same way with loaded car, with Kenyan products going to the international market. If we can do that, we do the aggregation projects right, the industrialization, and then we insist on skills. A certain skill set is needed for us to achieve that. So once we can be able to do the TVETs right, which was under his docket when he was deputy president, I hope he gives it another kick so that it goes to the forefront, because university education is training managers. How many managers do you need, for example, at KBC? Maybe one or two, or even departmental. But do you need the technical people? And this is where the TVET comes in to actually put the skill sets so that these people will be working in the aggregation centers so that we can be able to export more to the international world. So that, we need to open up this particular country so that Kenya is known for business. I like his move of trying to bring the world home, that Kenya is the cradle place for humankind. So we are going to be a visa-free country. That is something which can work to our post. But then we need to, what are people coming? You can't invite people home if you have nothing. They also have their home. So you need to have a particular agenda. Where are you bringing these people? Let's improve our tourism. Let's do marketing. So that actually people know that if I go to Kenya, I'll be able to do 1, 2, 3, and then it's going to be worth the investment. So if we put these things in place, I don't think in the next 5 years we will be at the same place we are. We'll be a better country.
And still, as we take stock, of course, we have to also look at the misses, but we're going to look at that a little bit later. Doc, I would like you to weigh in on the cabinet that was elected. And one of the things that the Ministry of Agriculture announced was the reduction of fertilizer prices. And somebody argued that indeed it was a good thing, but what about the pastoralists who do not need fertilizer for their crops? Maybe they would have some subsidies in terms of the animal feeds, or in terms of how they sell their meat and provision of market and things like this. I would like you to pick your mind on that.
I think before I get into that, there's one component in the health sector I wanted to air it out
very quickly,
so that we know where we are in terms of the health sector reform and where we are heading to. With the 2010 Constitution, we were asked to devolve everything. The health sector became one of the sectors that has been devolved to the counties. But challenges are there. The health sector is not like any other sector where you can just devolve and then hand it over to people who have know-how in terms of how health structures operate. And that is at the county level. A lot has been said in terms of having the Health Service Commission to oversee the health provision within the country. This is not going in very well as county governments are pushing to remain with the health services as a devolved function. But when you look at it very keenly, I think there are a number of things that we need to reverse so that when we are done with the whole restructuring of the health service provision and ensured that people who will be handed over to these health services understand exactly the content and how it should operate within the counties, we will never get far with the health sector, and it will going to cause a lot of confusion. An example is that you will find a lot of nepotism within the health sector staffing. Wakili mentioned a consultant being paid like an intern. Actually, you have not mentioned the whole thing. When you look at keenly the health sector, for example, you will find a young man who has completed the university being started with a job group S, and a health worker who has been working for the last 23 years has been left with a job group M. And with all the qualifications, with all the requirements that needed for him to prepare to propel to that level. When we were working for the health, when we were working in the health sector, grading promotions come with merits. Those are no longer the history of the way health sector is being managed at the moment. My take on this will have been, let the government sit back. Let's not politicize health. Let's sit back and restructure the whole issues regarding health infrastructure, devolving it slowly to the county. And by the time the structure is full, let's then hand over to the county government. In regards to performance, in regards to agricultural sector, in regards to the subsidy, fertilizer subsidy, and of course, possible, as you mentioned, what subsidies do pastoralists have now that they don't do farming? They do animal herding, and they also need to benefit from the larger agricultural services that are provided by the government. I think we know very well KMC, which is one of the center for production of meat, has been temperamental in terms of receiving animals during the drought season. The government initiated a process called, buying
the livestock offloads.
Offloads, yeah, yes. Livestock offloads. That was at the emergency level, and it is an knee-jerk response. But a long-term plan, I don't know whether the government should initiate fodder production first, because we actually don't have a fodder production center. 2, subsidies for those fodders, or maybe providing. 3, of course, restocking. One of the things that in other countries people do when drought strikes and animals perish, then it is time for the government to do what is called restocking. Each and every person is given either 2 he-goats, 1 he-goat and 2 she-goats, or a camel he-goat, or in a structured manner where every component of a family is given a portion, or not a portion, a number of animals that they often use as their livelihood, for them to keep it up in, start their life again. So that could be an option that the government might look at, but I know it becomes very difficult when we only spend a lot of money rebuying animals that will not be existing. They will going to be perishing. That's why families or people are given some money in that regard. But as you mentioned, it is important for the government to look at what options are there for the pastoralist. Now, we know each and every day people talk about El Nino. It's just coming. And the challenge in arid and semi-arid, or the desert now called the desert of northern Kenya, is lack of water. I know during El Nino there will be massive floods everywhere. Did we prepare harvest, somewhere where we can harvest all that massive water? And when you look at the climate change, it looks like every other 10 years or every other 5 years, we either have a severe drought or we have severe floods. So it is good for us to understand the behavior of the current climate changes. And of course, it is not normal like before. And when you meet abnormality in a normal situation, you need to have proper plan to normalize the abnormalities that you see in those areas. On that note, I tend to think the government needs to place water harvesting dams, or rather water harvesting points, so that we don't have to look for water. Animals require only fodder and water. Once they get these two, regardless of whether there is drought or not, the animals will not going to be lost, for sure. So I think the government should look at it that way. In terms of performance, Wakili has put it very well. I think that is his area of expertise. I also do have people who work, and we look at, when I was in the international arena, we employ people. You know, employing someone is one thing, but performing lies with the person who has been given the job. It has nothing to do with the person who gave you the job. And if you are not able to deliver, then of course the system will deliver you out. Why? Because when the president was appointing cabinet secretaries, I know it was a very tense time. He had time frame within which he was supposed to form his government, and quite often you may find one or two or three of them who might not be fit for the positions they have been given. But again, if you are given a job as a leader, because cabinet secretaries, the PSS, as much as the PS is the accounting officer, the cabinet secretary provides policies and leadership. And leadership has no speciality in school. Leadership is something you learn through process, through being tasked as a leader. So if they have not picked up their leadership, like the way the president has taken up the whole, taking up leadership of the whole country is not an easy thing. And when he thinks of every sector within the government and have at least knowledge on what is going on in every aspect of the ministries, then you who has been given only one ministry should be an expert. You have technical people working under you who are valuable to you in terms of delivering your service, as well as ensuring that whatever the government needs to do in terms of delivery must have been looked at with an eagle eye by the technocrats who are in the ministry. The so-called the institutional memory, people who have institutional memory are technocrats who have grown within the system and reach a certain level, and they become useful in terms of reforming the institution, in terms of guiding new leaders who are impressing the officers, and of course ensuring that whatever is done is in line with that area of expertise that they are supposed to do. So the bottom line is that if someone does not want to perform and he has been given the task, I think Wakili has just mentioned it, he should be shown the way. Again, it is of essence that when someone is not performing well, it is good for him to be given proper guide in terms of areas of his weakness and areas that he's expected to deliver, and of course with his strength as well. That way he is able to beef up also and catch up with the situation.
Yes.
And if the process of doing that he is not able to maintain the momentum, then we have no other option. We have a lot of Kenyans who can become CSS,
yes,
including Wakili and myself.
All right. And when we come back, we also we need to first of all cross over to Nduta Mukami, who is lining up something on telco. But when we come back, we will be looking at something that Kenyans were eagerly waiting for, the reduction of the cost of living, which has continued actually to bug Kenyans, and the head of state was very categorical that he will ensure that the cost of living come down, but it's yet to happen. But we'll be discussing that and what it entails us to ensure that we go back to what we were having a little bit earlier in the year last year. Nduta Mukami is looking at the importance of international telco to ensure that Kenyans remain and are connected, and also Africa as well. Mukami?
And a very good morning to you, Ben Troy Njue back in studio. We are coming to you live from the Radisson Hotel in Upper Hill, and today is the first day of the inaugural International Telecommunications Week. And some of the things that are being discussed today include last mile connectivity. Now, if you remember that the bottom-up transformation economic agenda, the digital economy has been prioritized, and some of the conversations that have been ongoing have to do with matters 5G connection, how the government is planning to ensure that everyone on the in the country is connected. And I am currently joined by Mr. Mulea Muya, who is a representative from the Ministry of Information, Communication and the Digital Economy, and he'll just be bringing us up to speed about some of the conversations that we'll be having. Begin by introducing yourself, your name, and then just give us a brief summary of what is happening on ground.
Thank you very much, Nduta. My name is Mulei Muya. I'm the Director of Public Communications in the Ministry of Information, Communication and the Digital Economy. I am here to represent the Principal Secretary, State Department of Broadcasting and Telecommunications, Professor Edward Kisiangani, who could not make it to this conference because of exigencies of work.
Now, as we were in some of the plenary discussions, there was talks about 5G and how 5G has been growing in the African continent. Could you just tell us briefly what the government is doing to ensure that there is last mile connectivity to everyone? And also, please bring us up to speed on some of the measures that the government is implementing with matters connectivity and how this is going to be part of the transformation that is happening in the country.
First and foremost, on behalf of the government, we are very happy that we are hosting very many delegates a week after the African Climate Change Summit. But this one is a specialized group because it brings together international players in the telecommunications industry. Now, we, as government, you are aware that we have a number of sea cables that terminate at the coast. Those are the ones that have enabled us to roll out the connectivity that we have. Our telecoms companies are in the process of rolling out 5G. This type of conference is useful to the country because it brings in experts in that industry, international players. So first and foremost, apart from hosting many visitors, our local players are going to use this for benchmarking. Again, we will have international solutions being brought on board to this forum, which can be used or can be contextualized into the Kenyan situation. We, for example, are now moving full steam into telemedicine. Telemedicine needs to be supported by connectivity. We have been told there by the representative of the Director General of the Communications Authority of Kenya that we still have about 1.7 million Kenyans who can make a call. Why? Because they are not connected. So the government is encouraging our telecommunication companies through our regulator, that is the Communications Authority, to reach out to those areas because all Kenyans deserve to be online. So we want that to be able to support other government initiatives that we are rolling out. And as you are aware, the development of the digital superhighway and the creative economy is one of the pillars that the government, the Kenya Kwanza government, has gone ahead and prioritized to get everybody on board.
Also, I just want you to talk about some of the private sector partnerships that we are looking to benefit from as a country from this conference.
Now, first and foremost, it is good to clarify that government is not in the business of doing business. Government is in the business of facilitating business. So we, through our regulator and even our ministry, we are out to facilitate our telecommunication companies, Safaricom, Airtel, Telcom, and all those other internet service providers to ensure that they roll out connectivity in all parts of Kenya. The government is planning to roll out 100,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable throughout the country to all the areas, even the ones that are not served as we speak. Now, government is doing about 48%. 52% of that is being done by private sector. So we have to partner with them so that we can ensure that it is done, as we're calling it, last mile connectivity, up to the last person.
And lastly, Mr. Mulek, we talked about, in the plenary session, we talked about the Africa Climate Summit, and some of the things that were discussed were about data sustainability. So it is important for the country to consider carbon neutral goals in terms of data collection and data storage. Can you just briefly talk about that?
Now, as you are aware, the government has an operational Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, backed by the Data Protection Act of 2019 and other regulations that have already come into force. Now, through that, we are encouraging data protection and privacy, both personal and even national, to be managed well. And that has to be sustainable. So we have combined through the Ministry of Environment.
That has been Nduta Mokami there engaging Mulei Muya, who is the director at the Ministry of Communication, who is representing Professor Edward Kisiangani there at the International Telecommunication Week that will be all through this week. And she will be telling us more in regards to what the telecommunication sphere is changing. But in a quick one, they're talking about how the telecommunication is changing. You know, the digital and telecommunication, they go hand in hand in terms of changing tides as telecommunication and technology advance, and also they are looking at the new technology in telemedicine. This is something that we'll also be looking at a little bit in our later subsequent bulletin, because telemedicine, Doctor, we can take maybe a minute to talk about that.
Yeah,
because
I think
you're also in the sphere,
yes,
and also it is going to help a lot in the Ministry of Health.
Yeah, I think telemedicine is a process where you will use digitalization or digital gadgets to diagnose and to treat. For example, you are in this hospital, you put in your complaint, the doctor views it from where he is seated, then checks your complaint and your issues, then asks you to do the following tests. So the tests are done, then the results are fixed, put in digitally, then he views the results and then prescribes. Or the common one that now the consultants, radiologists use is where the images are done and then the images are read from the other side at the comfort of your house. As a doctor, you are able to read the images from either CT scan, MRI, or ultrasound, or even X-ray, normal X-ray, and then advise or provide directions in terms of what the findings are all about, and then also provide treatment.
All right, thank you for expounding on
generally the contact between you and the doctor is more or less online. Yeah, you will not meet the doctor.
Gidaiga, we are also looking at some of the challenges that the hits and the misses. To be honest, the head of state, when he came into power, and even when he was campaigning, he was talking about the high cost of living. We know very well that the high cost of living is not exactly somebody's fault, because we're also looking at the global dynamics. We are post-COVID. We are also looking at the war in Ukraine. There are a number of factors which are leading to high cost of living, and especially the African countries are worst hit, Kenya no exception. This is something that he had pledged also to look into. And it has also created fodder for Azimio One Kenya to also go to the streets and say, well, these are the things that you talked about, you haven't done it. And even at the bipartisan talk, this was something that was also mooted. This is something that the head of state had promised, but things are not quite working out. If you ask me as a Kenyan, a lot of Kenyans are still complaining about the high cost of living.
Yes, thank you very much. Before I get into that, I just want to point out a few things that I had seen the government has done very well. So, for example, like any government in the world would want to have strength in the National Assembly or in Parliament. And you've seen the president has been able to marshal his troops properly. He has the majority, so that first the foundation, then this first year is a foundation basis in terms of building good systems, building synergy, you know, building something systemic, so that if it's from point A to point Z, there is a flow. So you can see now we have in the legislative arm of the government, the Kenya Kwanza is in control, okay? And they're able to pass bills, and they're able to pass what government business is all about, what's happening there. So we give them an 8 out of 10. Then, in terms of well coordination of government services and operations, indeed, you have seen a change from the past, whereby a lot of things are happening under wraps, unlike how it was before. Ministers would be very political. You know, you find ministers discussing politics rather than focusing in their work. You can see the way the president and the deputy are leading in the front, how they are doing their things. So operations of government are well coordinated, and we give them 90%. We don't have complaints on that. On the area of digitization and digital superhighway, 100%. They have improved from where in 1 year, what President Kenyatta was not able to do, they have done it in 1 year. 5,000 government services. And I know we have Google, we have Google search engines. I want to recommend Kenyans, make e-citizen your search engine, because all the opportunities,
and especially
all
for the young
information, yes, especially for young people, all the information is right there at your fingertip. If you want a birth certificate, if you want an ID, if you want a passport, not just on the side of identity and stuff, even if you want other information that will help you so that you can further your life. Then intergovernmental relations, how the county governments, how the parastatals, how the state departments are working, you can see there is a form of synergy and there is a leadership stemming out from there. For example, the disbursement of the funds. Before there was a complaint by Anne Waiguru, I remember sometime in February, where they were up in arms with the government. And all of a sudden, what they didn't realize is how this government is operating is different from the past. So they're collecting the money first, the revenue, and ensuring every cent is budgeted for its use. Not just having a stockpile of money and then without even following the law. You hear that money, for example, you know about debts. We are told today, when the former government, nusu mkate hiyo tunaambiwa ilikuwa ya Raila na Uhuru, we are told that we borrowed money without the approval of Parliament. And therefore, there is no checks and balances. So all that reform has come in, and this is what Kenya Kwanza was doing. You remember the deputy president, when he was being sworn in, he mentioned about finding empty coffers. And indeed, we do believe it. But now they have been able to build systems of revenue collection, and they're able to now ensure that whatever they budget for is what they're using it for. And the reduction of theft. Because when you have a president who talks about three things, that if you don't follow what we are saying, this is the consequence, I'm sure there is nobody who is going to attempt. As now we go back to the challenges. Indeed, in everything, you'll have a good and the bad, or you'll have the positive and the negative. But what I want to say, because you mentioned about Azimio jumping on the bandwagon of the cost of living, those are fake people.
And away from that, let's be very honest.
Let me finish
Edward,
this. Let me finish this. No, I have to bring it out.
I'm just saying,
I have to bring it
Azimio
out
is using
with
it
so
as
much
fodder
pain.
for demonstrations.
Exactly, with so much pain. Our economy has suffered since December 2022, when the Azimio began this riotous.
Let's be very honest. The cost of living was there even before the Azimio demonstrations.
I'm saying the demonstrations began in December. And the cost of living was there. But because of these fake demonstrations, because of people being misused, young people losing their lives, destruction of property, and gaining nothing. Even when you look at what is being discussed today in the table at the national level, is not what these people were fighting for. These people were giving us stories about opening the server and things like that.
I want us to narrow it down to the cost of living because of the interest of time.
Listen, it had a negative economic effect on the economy because one thing, we stopped having direct investment. Right? People were not investing because the country is not stable. If today Raila can come and say there's no operations in government, there's no matatu operating, that went on for 9 months. So we blame the Azimio leadership because at the same time, we thank God we have a sober government. Because even with all that pressure, they were able to stabilize the economy. And even if you walk around the streets, the cries that you had before are not as much as they are today.
All right.
Because they have put in measures to contain the economy. Putting sufurias on your head and going for demonstrations
I would
will
like
not
us to look
contain
at
the economy.
the measures now. What exactly, even as Kenyans ourselves, away from everything else, let's put politics aside. The high cost of living is not only hitting Kenyans, even African countries, and even we have recession.
It's a global phenomenon.
It's a global phenomenon.
Yes.
How can we assist the government as we are right now to change the dynamics in the country? Indeed. Because at the end of the day, each country is dealing with high cost of living in its own way. Indeed. What are some of these measures?
Some of these measures are like this. We have to align ourselves with what the government plan is. Now we're talking about Kenyans. We're telling Kenyans the government had a manifesto. They have the plan. They have the bottom-up agenda, right? Where the government is focusing on, and I remember Wakili talked about the aggregation centers. Yes, we can see gaps. Those gaps is for you, Wakili, and other businessmen to wake up and start following where government is going. As you can see with private sector and international development money, they are going to where the government is going towards. So if we want to reduce the cost of living, if we want to stabilize the shilling, we must be able to produce for ourselves. And that's why you see the government has come up with the initiative on agriculture. First of all, they've collected all the data and collecting till today of even the pastoralist. Every person who, because it's part of livestock is in agriculture, okay? So they're collecting that data to know. And this, remember again, is not from the sky. It's part of their plan, their agenda, the Kenya Kwanza agenda. So they're collecting that data so that any reforms that they are bringing in place, be it in tea, be it in coffee, be it in sugar, be it whatever, the right person is the one who is benefiting on the ground. That is a change. For example, with the fertilizer, people were able to get fertilizers into their farm from a price of 7,500 to 3,500 now to 2,500. Those are measures that the government is putting in place. The other thing is about the housing. Look at Nairobi. 70% of people, 80% live in slums. These are our brothers and sisters. Until we have a deliberate move to sort that problem, we will never sort it. And many governments have tried to do it, but the right way is now the government has created a specific special fund that will be collated and money put together for this construction. And at the same time, we're talking about job creation. The government has gone, I remember when you started and you talked about the foreign policy, the president has traveled to over 21 countries. He's not going on holiday. He's going there to work, to ensure that they create jobs for the majority of the youth who are tech savvy. And so that our youth, because we have a youth bulge, in fact, we are told, and the president represented so well last week, Africa is the youngest continent. So therefore, anything that puts African youth aside is not good for Africa. And that is why you see His Excellency, you look at the Hustler Fund. At the beginning, people were laughing at it.
Actually, I have a question on the youth because you do represent the youth, being the CEO of the Vision 2030 Youth Enterprise Association. I would like to see how do you feel as the youth, have you been well represented? But before then, let's have the sights and sounds of what this day, the 13th of September, had to entail, since it was the biggest day of the Kenya Kwanza regime and the president, William Ruto. That was 13 September 2022. My director, is it ready?
To the people of Kenya, the president-elect, Excellency, Honorable Dr. Ruto William Samoei, and invite him to take his place in the inauguration dance, which is the oath of allegiance of the President. Mr. President, please repeat after me. I, William Samoei Ruto, in full realization of the high calling I assume as President of Kenya, of the Republic of Kenya, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Republic of Kenya, that I will obey, preserve, protect, and defend this Constitution of Kenya as by law established, and all other laws of the Republic, and that I will protect and uphold the sovereignty, integrity, and dignity of the people of Kenya. So help me God.
Very well, colorful and exciting are hardly suitable words to describe the environment that was there at the Kasarani Stadium. Remember, that is 13th September 2022 when President William Ruto took over the reins of power as the 5th Commander-in-Chief of the Republic of Kenya. And gentlemen, there are a number of things that he said during that swearing in. Let's first of all look at the rule of law and matters corruption, Wakili, because I do remember the first executive order was in regards to what the previous regime had not done, had not followed the rule of law, and a number of that were based on what the other regime had not accomplished but was supposed to do. And when it comes to the judges, this is something that you hold close to your heart.
Yeah, that's something which is very close to my heart, and the fact that the president, we had received really a big beating in terms of the rule of law in the former regime. It was only fair that the president comes in with a reconciliatory tone at the highest point of leadership. And you know what really makes me feel good is the fact that he had the courage to say it from his very first speech that you know, I do acknowledge these things have not been done right. There are a couple of things which have not been conducted in the manner in which they were supposed to be conducted. You know, one of the things he received was the Constitution and then the sword. So the sword is for a sign of leadership to enforce, for enforcement. But for you to lead, you need the Constitution. So when you put the Constitution aside and you decide to use the sword, then it means you are not actually governing the country. You are actually becoming a dictator, or you're becoming an autocrat. And Africa has suffered so many autocrats, or so many presidents who are feeling like they're larger than life. But the end always is not a very nice one. I mean, we had a president who believed that I'm told Mobutu Sese Seko back in the day when our former president Moi went to went to DRC and they were signing some kind of agreement, and Mobutu calls President Moi to the outside the conference room and they're busy chatting. Moi is concerned. We came here to sign an agreement. Why are we outside? Then Moi tells, then Mobutu tells him, I mean, we are not the people signing, it's the minister signing. But we need to be there to see what they are signing. Then Mobutu tells him, look here, if you are worried, if they don't sign the correct thing, me, I just kill them. So we have had presidents who operate in such a manner. So we do have Kenyans. We need to credit ourselves. We have a very beautiful constitution, a constitution which has been born courtesy of the blood and sweat of Kenyans for a very long time, not within a short time, because there were other failed attempts to have the constitution, but finally we got it. We need to credit ourselves for that and hold it supreme. So when the president starts acknowledging that, you know, there are things which you are not done right in the former regime, I'm going to start on a clean slate, and I'm going to ensure that that is actually held supreme, that inspires confidence in Kenyans that we have the right person who knows what is required of him.
All right. And still on the same, right?
Yes.
In this regime, the EPRA issue, when the High Court, first of all, set aside the implementation of the Finance Act, but EPRA went ahead. That is, I think that is the only dot on the Kenya Kwanza administration where we see the rule of law wasn't followed.
Yes, that is one aspect which really, I think, but it's still, it's in court. They're busy prosecuting it in court. We hope that justice will be served at the end of the day. The other issues also which we can be able to look at in terms of the rule of law, we had cases, people who had cases, and we have seen them drop, being dropped left, right, and center within one month. I think a couple of cases, landmark cases on corruption, have been dropped without a clear process, and that speaks so much. And we needed to know, maybe now that we don't have the current, the nominated person has not taken office. I understand is supposed to take it at the end of the week. We need to start asking such questions. On what basis were some of these cases? Actually, some of the cases which were being withdrawn, the judges have said, no, you just give us a proper account. Why are you withdrawing these cases? Let's have the accounting people come before the court and tell us where would they want these cases to be dropped. And you know, that is the fairness of the checks and balances. You don't wake up one day and say, now, I feel Troy is my friend and he supported me a lot, and he has some few cases, let me clear his baggage of cases, and then he's a clean man. So those are some of the things in terms of enforcement of the rule of law which we need to hold dear, because otherwise you can uphold the rule of law on this side, and then through the actions which are being done, if you are not in control of them, then it will be a joke, because issues of pilferage of government money is something which affects all Kenyans. So if some of the people who have been accused of such cases, end up being, they don't even go through the full trial, you know, that is quite questionable. So we need to proper account as to how some of these people are, if there are cases where some of them are yet to be, then let's have a clear process so that we have finality. We can be able to account so and so went through the process, he was found not guilty, or this is what happened. Let me give you a clear difference of what the rule of law can do. Kenya and Uganda have almost the same constitution. It's only maybe the headings and maybe some chapters which have actually been placed in different sections. But you can see the enforcement of rule of law, the governance aspect in Uganda is not there. In Uganda, you can disappear from your own house. You can actually be detained in your own house that you cannot be able to move. You can actually be battered in the streets like a squirrel, without question. The constitution has since been watered down through several piecemeal amendments, which have now made the constitution to look like a joke. So there is every reason as Kenyans that we be woke in terms of guarding any amendments to our constitution to ensure that we do not end up being we should be able to amend it for the better, not for the worse. Especially where we will want to go with interest of politicians, we need to fight that jealously.
All right. Doc, looking at the foreign policy that the head of state and his government have adopted, I've seen a lot of trips, a lot of signing of bilateral agreements. I would like you to touch on that, and especially Kenya being one of the beacons of hope and also technology in the region.
Joe, the president took a different direction from the former president in terms of foreign policies. President Uhuru used to rub shoulders with Chinese president every other time. And every move he makes is the East. Contrary, President Ruto has moved to the West. And generally, I know China has we have a lot of debt. The bulk of our debt is with China. But making a drastic move to the West is something that perhaps the president has seen is a more structured way of doing or borrowing or getting grant for the country. Unlike Chinese government, who probably put things in the perspective of a business person. That's why you see projects that are being partnered, like the expressway. It's a partnership between a Kenyan company and a Chinese company, contractor. And that's a real business, but they come through the government. So that's one. But President Ruto has done three things that I have loved. One, the fact that he has openly engaged international community on his intention of how Kenya will be managed and how Kenya will diplomatically relate to the outside world. He has never hidden it. So he comes out where he talks about we no longer need to have a dollar business. Each and every African country must have their own currencies and find a way of doing it. Secondly, he has sold the image of Kenya. For example, you see when he was in the UN Assembly, he has talked about the greatness of this nation. And he did not just leave it there, but he became a Pan-Africanism leader, where he also brought Africa into the perspective. The third thing is that the president has pulled, international community on the current contentious issue, the climate change. Issues of climate change is a global phenomenon. But when the UN headquarters on environmental affairs is in Nairobi, and when he pulled the whole world to do the African Environmental Conference in Kenya, that meant a lot. And the resolutions, when you see, he has played a lot of role in leading the process, and of course pointing quite a number of things that affects Kenya and benefits Kenya eventually if those declarations are honored, other than even other African nations. That means that he has Kenya at heart. Then the second friend of his is East Africa, and the third friend of his is Africa at large. And then afterwards is when he will think outside the African territory, where he mentions, the commonalities and common things that they could share in terms of changing the dynamics on issues of climate change. So generally the president has put his foot on the ground in terms of issues related to diplomatic relationship in this country, as well as how best Kenya is viewed. Don't forget, you remember our athletes used to make us proud, but they used to make us proud on the televisions. You remember very well. But now they are making us proud because the government has acknowledged. And when he said that when you bring a gold, you get a house and amount of money.
All right. And because
Kenyans feel like now the government owns them.
All right.
Like any other country in West, in the Middle East, if you are an athlete or if you have a skill or if you are someone who has a lot of things, then I know our time is over.
Yes.
They take that particular person and give him everything that he needs in order for him to represent and sell the country.
All right.
So I think we are moving in the right direction.
All right. Gidaiga.
Very fast.
In 1 minute.
Yes.
Are we, as the youth, as one of the guys representing organizations that touch on the youth, do you believe in the 1 year that the government has done what it should to the youth?
Most definitely. First of all, with the foreign policy, you can see even with the African Youth Climate Assembly, had the full support of the president and brought the other leaders on board. And also you can see the Pan-African in the president. He's not just fighting for political, he's fighting for the African common person. He has a unifying force. he's bringing an intelligent perspective.
Okay.
And by the way, a challenge I would like to give His Excellency, once his chairmanship at the African Union with climate change has come to an end in January, he should then look at the constitutional governance matter and rule of law, be the champion for Africa in terms of constitutional and rule of law.
Okay.
And to defeat the romanticization of coup d'etats.
Yes,
in
we actually...
Because coup d'etats
yes.
in Africa are not going to take us where Africa is
All
supposed
right.
to go.
Gidaiga, unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you so much indeed, gentlemen, for your time and your insight. We do this again some other time. A lot to discuss. A lot has happened in the last 1 year. And we are hoping that all this, that good things that we are having, we're going to translate them to the ground. But unfortunately, those that we are not supposed to do, we should keep them where they should. Case in point, corruption. Thank you so much for joining us. Len Saudingo has been our sign language interpreter. My name is Njue. Let's continue this conversation on social media. Edward Gidaiga, Isaac Hassan, and Gibson Gisore have been my commentators for this show. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kirinyaga, hamjambo. Stesheni unayoyenzi ya Shoro FM. Shoro FM. Kwa ushirikiano na Jamii Executive Gardens Mwea, tunakuletea burudani ya kutetemesha Kirinyaga. Ijumaa tarehe 15 Septemba. Burudani hii itaongozwa na Prince of Mugithi, Tony Young. Pamoja na 90K Kamso. Kipindi ukipendacho cha Friday Night Express kitakufikia moja kwa moja kutoka Jamii Executive Gardens na nahodha wake Joy wa Masharia.
Karibuni sana.
Watangazaji wa kituo cha Shoro FM wakiwemo Mwanamwede, DJ Kama na wengineo pia watakuwa. Usikose kufika Jamii Executive Gardens Mwea, tufurahie pamoja. Tarehe 15 Septemba kuanzia jioni hadi che. Burudani hii ni kwa hisani ya Jamii Pure Pishori Rice. Tupatane Mwea.
1 year in office, 23 ministries. Time to review the journey in implementing the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. What is your assessment of the government's performance? Will they ace the performance test? Tune in to KBC News at 9 p.m. for the government scorecard.